Good afternoon. It's Monday, the 1st of February 2016. February already, Mike.
Yeah.
Incredible. Just after 1 o'clock, welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish. With me in the studio, Mike Robinson. And weather cold, damp, chilly in Plymouth. I think we'll leave it at that. And what's happening? Well, a lot of people are contacting the UK Column at the moment to say they're seeing chaos unfolding in the country, everything becoming very confused, being hit by a lot of things. But of course, buried under that situation is the fact that we're at a constant state of war.
Indeed. So, Evening Standard here reporting on the latest anti-Putin rhetoric, which is being ramped up, obviously, on the back of the Litvinenko affair. So on Friday, apparently Turkey's foreign ministry alleged that a Russian Su-34 bomber had violated its airspace, claiming that this was a violation on NATO as a whole. They said this violation is a concrete indication of Russia's acts aiming to escalate problems despite the clear warning by our country and by NATO. We openly and clearly call on Russia to act responsibly so that the Turkish airspace, which is NATO airspace, is not violated. Now, of course, this time Turkey didn't shoot down an aircraft. I suppose that could be because it feared the kind of backlash it got the last time, or perhaps it was because there actually was no airspace violation. So the US backed up Turkey's allegations, however, and they said that they could confirm the violation. We call on Russia to respect Turkish airspace and cease activities that risk further heightening instability in the region. And that was according to a Pentagon spokesperson. Well, this is from the FT, and it's typical of the propaganda we're seeing at the moment, a carefully selected image to make Putin look extra aggressive, and a headline which is disingenuous at best, designed to invoke memories of the ballot box and the bomb and imply that Putin is a terrorist, I believe. Putin wants to bomb Syria and talk in Geneva. And the subheadline says, Russia is using peace summit in Switzerland as a smokescreen for war. I think, Brian, we need to remember, do we not, that Russia is not actually at war? It was invited into Syria by the Syrian government to support the government's war with ISIS and al-Nusra Front and so on. Can Britain and the US say the same? I don't think so. I think the hypocrisy is incredible here. But if you read the rest of the FT article, this FT article, do make sure you have a bucket or some kind of receptacle beside you, because you're likely to feel very ill very quickly. The article, unsurprisingly perhaps, is uncredited, so I presume it's the opinion of the newspaper itself. And they say, ever since the Russian president stormed into Syria, his air force and ground allies, mainly Iran-trained and led militias, have set about eradicating every force that exists between the Assad regime and ISIS, which seldom attack each other. Last week, too, the regime claimed Rabia, a rebel town near its northern heartland in Latakia, after it was first reduced to rubble by Russian airstrikes. Anything Russian diplomats say in Geneva should be seen in that light, according to the FT. Now, the loss of the town, which was Rabia, as they're talking about, that town was actually controlled by al-Nusra Front, Jabhat al-Nusra. Now, as we all know, this is an al-Qaeda affiliate. But according to the FT, we should feel sorry that that town has been lost, because that was legitimate opposition, apparently. And I should also mention that this morning, another town has been liberated. This is the Syrian Arab Army, 4th Mechanized Division, alongside Hezbollah and one or two others, have taken control of a town whose name I'm not even going to try to pronounce. I do apologize for that. And of course, that was another al-Nusra held town. So Russia absolutely contributing to the current success against al-Nusra Front and ISIS at the moment. And because they're doing that good job, of course, the West can't let that situation go unpunished. Sorry, I need to jump forward to this one because I got these in the wrong order. But dozens killed. I mean, it was about 50 people killed in this atrocity over the weekend. This is kind of spiteful, isn't it, Brian? The type of thing that we see from people that play geopolitics of this type, where if they're losing the battle, they take it out on civilians, yep. Innocent civilians. Well, this was 50 people killed, a car bomb, and then 2 suicide bombings. And I suspect as Russia proceeds, unfortunately, we're going to see more of this type of thing.
Well, it has been extraordinary, Mike, isn't it? We had David Cameron clamouring, absolutely clamouring, beating the MPs into submission to get the RAF involved in bombing Syria. They carry out a handful of missions, and then all of a sudden there's absolute silence on what the UK is up to, and indeed what the Americans are up to. What's the reason for this? Clearly the Russian policy is working. So,
well, what's really staggering is that they have no answer for this at all. And just to give an impression of how much of an answer they don't have, Claire Short and Andrew Mitchell, literally about half an hour ago, I think it was, have reinitiated this rhetoric for no-fly zones and safe zones. So they can't come up with any sort of new solutions to this. They just keep banging on the same old rhetoric that they've used time and time again.
Same old rhetoric, but of course what is coming in with it is all of the anti-terror legislation, which we'll be coming on to. But we've also got more general things happening in UK, particularly around the police. Have you still got one to cover that?
It's okay.
Okay, well, let's have a look at the sort of news that is at the moment buried from the general public. Now, I apologise that the text here is a little bit small, but you can always freeze the screen and have a look at it in your own time. This is an email to the UK column. Dear UK column, while going on a trip via King's Cross rail station on Friday afternoon, we saw about 25 fully armed police with dogs and body armour and automatic weapons. We asked a policeman why the public were being intimidated in this way, and he said it's just an exercise to get the public used to seeing this kind of police action. So the police now, at least they're telling the truth now. We're doing this to get you used to seeing fully armed British police on the streets. This is the objective, to get the fully armed police. And the other part of the email here I found very, very interesting. It's talking about, I'm sorry to use the term, but I couldn't think of a better one, the crap art, which is appearing in public all around UK. This is a bit of a story, and it's talking about the sculpture Moore and some of his weird artworks appearing all over the place. But it says here that in a particular place, when the local artwork by this man was stolen, the local newspaper was, quote, flooded with people saying, "Thank God it's gone." So we've suddenly got money for all of this perverse artwork appearing everywhere. We've got money to arm Britain's police on the back of so-called terrorists who are going to murder us all in our beds. Where has that load of nonsense come from? Well, that's come out of actions in Iraq and Syria and Libya, Afghanistan, all being drifted in at the moment without, it appears, anybody other than the UK column putting the pieces together. We are watching a police state being assembled in front of our eyes. We simply have to connect the dots. Well, could we make it any plainer? This was an article from a couple of days ago, the Daily Mail. Holidaymaker stopped by police at the airport over an unpaid TV licence fine, which she didn't even owe. Now, this is tremendous spin in this article because, of course, it wasn't the fact the lady didn't owe this, which she didn't. It's the fact that this has been promoted because the message is you dare challenge the state, and that includes the BBC. You don't pay your TV licence. You can expect to be picked up, presumably by armed police, at the airport. And of course, it was a Met police officer that warned UK column that what the government would love to do is introduce the no-fly rule for anybody who is going to challenge the state. And let's remember that Ian Crane was stopped a couple of weeks ago. He'd come back from Holland. He'd been talking about fracking, and he gets stopped by an anti-terrorist squad at Exeter Airport. So we're going to say this is an article which is nudging you towards police state Britain. Challenge the state and we'll arrest you or stop you flying. The next step is you're not allowed to leave the country if you challenge the government and you're a political dissident.
Well, that's right. And this is a good example of the bring the policy in step by step. And we'll come on to this a bit later as well. Because, of course, the possibility that people were going to be stopped on the way out of the country was introduced into the media when they were bringing this new rule in, where passports were going to be checked on the way out of the country as well as on the way in. Now, what happened was that as soon as that new rule came in, that there was a chance you could be picked up on the way out of the country. Quick as a flash, nothing happened, so people forgot about it. Now, it's only 6 or 8 months ago that new rule came in, but nonetheless, people forgot about it, and here we are with the first examples of people being stopped on the way out. And at the time, if you remember the coverage, there was the threat this could be anything for a civil debt. Now, the fact that this is unpaid TV license, well, there is still the criminal element to an unpaid TV license, but nonetheless, are we about to be getting stopped at the ports and airports if you happen to owe some council tax, some other civil debt to Capita or whoever it is?
Yeah,
that's clearly on the cards.
We're not talking Russia here, we're talking David Cameron's Britain. So it's tremendous, isn't it? President Putin is portrayed there as this aggressive dictator, when in fact the dictatorship is already installed in Westminster, and is going to be using the internet in a very big way, which we're going to be seeing. We'd like to return to this little story which we had a few days ago, which was 4 Cornwall schools evacuated amidst coordinated security threat. Now, we commented at the time that it seemed very interesting. It was a coincidence that the government was pushing out its prevent policy in school, and hey presto, along came the terror threats. So schools in Penzance and Ives and Truro were all affected. Somebody called in with a chilling warning. Nobody was ever told what that was. And in London, 4 other schools were affected, and in West Midlands, a further 6 schools were reportedly evacuated. Well, thank you to an overseas viewer. This is somebody who watches from Australia. Says, hi Brian, I'm currently in Australia, and after seeing your reports of schools in the UK being evacuated because of bomb threats, I thought this would be of interest. And what this gentleman pointed out is this report, which I've taken from Yahoo News, obviously, bloodbath in 40 minutes. Here's the headline designed to really ram home the fear and the terror. Bloodbath. Well, there was no bloodbath. School bomb threat confirmed as a hoax. And several schools around Sydney were evacuated. It turned out to be a hoax. There were no imminent threats, not thought to be terrorist related. Well, this is remarkable, isn't it? We've got the same thing happening in Australia as Cornwall, but nothing to do with terrorism. And in this article, it said that similar threats have been made in London, Paris, Belgium, Norway, Tokyo, and Amsterdam, and of course Cornwall. Amazing coincidence, Mike.
Global PSYOP.
Global PSYOP, indeed.
Well, Snoopers Charter then. This is a great analysis in the Register. Do go and have a read at it in full. They are talking about the costs of the Snoopers Charter. Sorry, the Home Office, they say, has revealed some costs associated with the proposed investigatory powers law. But the price tag at the end is being, the various people involved in this are saying is going to come to billions of pounds. They're saying that Theresa May has estimated a price tag of 247 million over a 10-year period, but they're pointing out that this 247 million does not take into account the costs for interception of bulk personal data and hacking into computer systems. Costs associated with those policy provisions are marked as not known. Read the rest of it, but it gives a good breakdown of where they think most of the costs are going. Quite a lot of the cost is going to come from the fact that the government has agreed, as part of the draft investigatory powers bill, that telcos and other ISPs should receive an appropriate contribution in respect of such of their relevant costs as the Secretary of State considers appropriate. So that could run to about £1.5 billion, apparently. Huge cost in this thing, and the government not really admitting it up front.
But money's no problem the moment it's something along these lines, Mike. We haven't got the money if it's to do with schools or if it's to do with the NHS. But at the moment, we've now got counter-terrorism and security coming in. Money is no problem.
Indeed. Okay, later on this evening then, at 7:30, we have Humanity versus Insanity, the Crane Report, and glad to say that Ian will have David Dees on. David Dees, as many people will recognise, is well known for these types of artwork. Got a couple of examples here. So Ian will be speaking to him at 7:30. We've seen these all over the internet. He's been producing these for years, really.
Very powerful.
Very powerful. And then at 9 o'clock this evening, Fracking Nightmare, and again, Ian will be speaking to various people and talking about the massive gas leak that's going on in the Southern California at the moment, and he'll also be talking about his continuing legal issues with Rathlin Energy. So that's at 9 o'clock, ukcolumn.org/live. Then.
Okay, thanks for that, Mike. Well, one of the constant threads through UK column reporting is the arrogance of the government. And what better place to go than to have a look at the Ministry of Defence? This headline we've been watching for some time concerns the death of Private Cheryl James. And this is deep cut, but more and more evidence coming to the surface of an MOD cover-up. So what we've got now is the MOD having admitted that it had thousands of documents which could be helpful to the inquiry over the death. Here's 4 people that have died as a result of deep cut. Evidence which could have helped the coroner's investigation has now been censored, and some of it appears to have disappeared. So we just wanted to comment on that. It doesn't matter whether it's foul play or it's the fact that the Ministry of Defence doesn't want to tell the truth about its incorrect use of the drug, anti-malarial drug Lariam. What do? You simply cover up. So we're seeing this more and more, very high level of government, whether it's over weapons of mass destruction or deaths, we simply cover up the truth. This would be more appropriate in
Nazi Germany.
Well, a lot of people get unhappy if we talk about Germany, so we could say Stalinist Russia, but of course it's not. It's David Cameron's Conservative Britain. You lie, you cover up, you remove the evidence, you put Jack Straw in charge of a committee to make sure people can't get the truth through freedom of information, and yet we are to trust David Cameron with EU negotiations, as we'll mention in a minute.
And it's with that in mind that I'm going to mention this story because, of course, the use of technology for medical purposes is not a bad thing unless you're living in a dictatorship. And then, of course, perhaps your view of what's going on may change. So this is scientists getting the go-ahead to genetically modify human embryos, and the go-ahead's been given by the Human Fertilization and Embryology Authority. And what they're saying is that they will permit the Francis Crick Institute in London to experiment in these first 7 days after fertilization. And what they claim that they're going to do is to aim to understand what goes wrong and what causes miscarriages. Now, they say the reason why it's so important is because miscarriages and infertility are extremely common, but they're not very well understood. So what they're going to do is start manipulating the genetic material of embryos from the age of 0 to 7 days. But that, of course, is only going to be the first step on a slippery slope. And so in the coming months and years, I'm quite sure they're going to want to extend that time period and extend that time period, and so it will go on. So I think people should be pretty uncomfortable with this type of research going on with the moral compass that our current regime may have.
Do they have one at all?
Well, that is another question. What do you think?
I don't think they have one at all, actually. I think they're capable of everything.
Well, perhaps this gives a clue, because this is Tom Watson tweeted this out earlier on today. He said, "The arrogance at the heart of government grows by the day." So this is just a in passing sort of thing. I was just interested to see what he was talking about. And it was this: unmanned air vehicles deployment, written question. And this is from Mr. David Anderson. And he asked, to ask the Secretary of State for Defence if he will make it his policy that the House be given the opportunity to debate in advance any decision to deploy UK Reaper aircraft outside Syria and Iraq. This is outside Syria and Iraq, and the answer simply no.
No, because David Cameron doesn't need Parliament anymore. He simply can go to war, he can kill people, he can do whatever he likes because he's given himself the power.
Right, so the key point here is it's outside Syria and Iraq, so it's in other countries. Does that include Britain? Not at this moment, but perhaps in the future. So the answer is no. That's Michael Fallon. There you go. But speaking of David Cameron, of course, he was having dinner with Donald Tusk, who is one of Europe's presidents, of course. And he came to London yesterday to speak about the deal that they've already done, but which they're pretending isn't done yet. So we are calling this absolutely part of the EU referendum psyop. They met at number 10 last night, and this is what Sky News was pushing out. Donald Tusk abruptly left number 10 Downing Street after just 1 hour, 45 minutes of PM's dinner diplomacy. When I asked, was there a deal, he said, no deal. And the impression that we were to believe was that Tusk had basically stormed off in a huff. Well, following the meeting, Downing Street, an unnamed Downing Street spokesperson, of course, said the Prime Minister and the President of the European Council, Donald Tusk, had a productive working dinner tonight, going through the draft proposals for reform in each of the 4 areas set out by the Prime Minister. Much progress has been made, particularly in the last 48 hours since the Prime Minister's meeting with the President of the European Commission. That's the other European President, Jean-Claude Juncker, on Friday. But there's still more hard work required. And so they go on. So they are trying to pretend that this deal is not yet done. I believe it absolutely is done. This is part of the psyop. And here's another part. Is the Daily Mail absolutely jumping on the bandwagon here and telling us all that in fact we all want to stay within the European Union, apparently. They've run a poll run for them by Comres, which has found that 54% would vote to remain in the EU if a referendum was held now. 36% say they would vote to leave the EU, and 10% undecided. So that's a clear win for David Cameron and his stay-in lot. This article also points out that that they're expecting that June the 23rd is going to be the date for the referendum. And this was the bit that really grabbed my attention, because it says the date is the only available Thursday in June that is not set out to be dominated by the Euro 2016 football championships, and it's almost as soon as Mr. Cameron would be legally allowed to have the referendum once he has a deal. He already has a deal, so that may be true, but nonetheless, Brian, I think it's pretty staggering, unsurprising, but staggering, that David Cameron would choose the middle of the Euro 2016 football tournament to hold a referendum on whether we should be in Europe or not. That's got to be one of the largest parts of this psyop, has it not? Well,
it comes back to arrogance, doesn't it? David Cameron thinks at the moment that everybody is so stupid, nobody will pick up on the fact that this is blatant manipulation of a referendum. We're going to be chatting in a minute about the European movement there in the background. Unlimited European money coming in to skew the vote, and Cameron cynically using football. Yeah, perhaps we should use Cameron as the football. Well, I had a call this morning, and it said perhaps you ought to be paying attention to Vote Leave, and this started to point us towards the I'm going to call it the snake's wedding of little organisations that are supposedly helping us decide on whether to stay in Europe or not. So a very strange website, this one. This is the sort of introduction you get. Vote, Leave, Take Control. So it starts off with a pretty strong statement. But as we get into all of these organisations that I'm about to show you, everything gets more and more vague as to whether they're really saying leave or in fact they're saying we need to renegotiate. So the email came in, had come from the chairman of this organisation, and what he was saying, he was afraid that majoring up on defence matters is not one of the areas they want to go in. The point being here that they were being told, of course, what being in Europe means is that we will have no control over our armed forces. That's what the 50-year pact with the French was designed to do. And here we've got an organisation saying we need to get out of Europe, but they don't want to talk about the control Europe has over the military. Why? Because we would suggest that subject was so dangerous, if they promoted it, their scam would be highlighted. So let's see if we can, so I was just going to label that the grey website of spin and confusion, where the defence of the nation is no importance. Encourage people to look at these websites themselves. Don't just go on one page. You need to get in and read what they're actually talking about. This one, amazingly dark, based on a flock of what? Starlings or something? If you read it, it's very interesting language. They're going to mix grassroots with new technology. But this is what we picked out, that this organisation, which is supposedly saying we're going to get out of the EU, is interfacing with Business for Britain. It's interfacing with Labour Leave. And we've got another one here, Conservatives for Britain. So who are these organisations? If all of these organisations are involved in leaving Europe, we should be doing quite well. Well, before we go there, just have a look at what Vote Leave has to say. It uses the NHS as the sell. Join us if you want to save the NHS. And in fact, I've labelled this bit the cynical reality. What this organisation is talking about is creating new EU institutions. So this is a complete scam. It's based on emotion, save the NHS. They don't want you to come out of Europe at all. They basically want to renegotiate a new EU because the old one is failing. So if we follow some of this through, here is Conservatives Vote Leave. Who are they connected with? Well, surprisingly, they're connected with Conservatives for Britain, which is quite clearly pro-EU. Or we could come in this direction. They're connected with Labour Leave, which sounds good, but when you read the website, you'll find that it's talking about a renegotiated EU settlement. Or if you don't like that, you could come over to Business for Britain, which supports a pro-EU renegotiation. But remember, the Conservatives at the top left trying to tell us this is all about leaving the EU. This is a con. Well, they don't want to get involved with Labour for Britain, and I think that's because if they were involved with that, it would all become a bit too obvious. Because Labour for Britain is really a pro-EU agenda. What I think they're doing here, Mike, is simply to confuse people and break up understanding of what's really going on.
Yeah, but they're also breaking up the no vote, aren't they? Because they're diverting people that would vote no into all these other channels.
Yep.
There'll be no coordinated no campaign. Yep. And therefore they're skewing the referendum as a result.
Skewing the referendum, and then David Cameron says, well, we'll pop in the EU referendum amongst the football. What can people do? In our view, it's up to all of us to be challenging these organisations. If they're going to work social media, we should be working social media. We should be flooding that social media with the fact what we are looking at is a scam. Each of these organisations set up not to inform people, but to deceive them.
And the hashtag, of course, is EU referendum PSYOP.
Yeah. Okay, well, just homing in on Labour Leave. What a cheek. It's time to leave the EU and stop the 19 billion UK taxes going to Brussels. But it's been Labour governments that's been sending the money to Brussels, which still hasn't got a set of audited accounts. And they're using people like this gentleman, we'll see in a minute, but Labour candidate, we face existential threat from UKIP in the south. Now remember that headline, because is this man worried about Europe, or is he simply worried about Labour losing seats to UKIP? Well, this is where we see the scam in action, because we've got a mixture of conservative so-called Eurosceptics with a gentleman I've just shown you, Brendan Chilton, And Mr. Chilton's just about to talk, not about leaving Europe, nothing skeptic. It's about how to rework things so that the EU continues. And if you don't understand what this man is saying, well, we can help you, because he says, well, we better get it right, because otherwise we're going to be bound, we're going to be locked into the European Union for 30 to 40 years, to which we say the great lie. This is about instilling fear and submission. Parliament cannot bind its, it should be its successors there. I'll correct that later. And to try and do that with a foreign power is treason. So this is a key part of this regime, that you are twisting it in order to get people to say, well, we better stay in Europe because otherwise we're going to be in big trouble. Well, we've mentioned this one before. This is Britain Stronger in Europe, and this was investigated by some of the mainstream press. The Telegraph was one of them, saying interesting organisation because this was being funded by the European movement. A former Tory MP, Laura Sands, chair of the European movement, which itself openly says it's involved in propaganda. And you've got Willie Straw, Jack Straw's son, involved as chief executive. So son's involved with this, the father's involved with working to suppress freedom of information. I wouldn't trust either of them.
No.
Can we put that more plainly?
I don't think so.
No. Well, whilst all of that's going on, we again have been warning what's been happening, whether it's in Scotland or other parts of UK. And a little headline which came up again a few days ago in the Herald: could Cornwall's police split from the rest of the country under Curnow Cops plan? Now, we think this is another nudge story, because if you analyse what it's putting in people's mind, that there's going to be centralisation of the police. If this plan was to happen, Cornish police would effectively be under the control of a handful of people in Cornwall Council. So this would be a mini fiefdom like Scotland. But of course, the other thing it's working to do is to break up the UK. We've nearly got Scotland pushed away. Here we go with Cornwall. And it's been the UK column that has warned over a number of years that this independence was actually fomented by an EU organisation, a very devious little organisation called FEWEN. And the role of that organisation was to help break Europe up into manageable chunks and regions, divide and rule. We covered some of this in an article published in the UK column back in 2014. And the particular quote was that in regular meetings between patriotic but misguided Cornishmen and EU officials, FEWEN was able to fan the flames for Cornish independence, promotion of the Cornish language and fair treatment as a disadvantaged area. The flames grew into the successful application into 2014 to be recognised by the EU as Minority Cornwall. So a pretty proud nation with an amazing history is now grovelling in order to be recognised as a minority by the European Union. It's really sickening. If you haven't researched FEWEN, please do. You will find quite a bit on the internet, a very, very dirty little organisation. Well, if Cornwall is to become a mini police state under Curnow Police, we just wonder whether this will be the quality of police running it. So we've got a Mr. Williams sacked from an 80,000 a year post after, I think it's 4 offences at work, disgraceful behaviour with women within his command. And we then have a remarkable situation where a QC defends him and said his impact on public confidence and the reputation of the police service was utterly exemplary, except he was going around sexually harassing women. And we have to get a decision from another QC. I think this is interesting, Mike, that public are not allowed to think for themselves anymore. We need a QC to tell us whether something's right or wrong. I think we need the public to judge the QCs, and we'd be getting somewhere near the truth.
Right. Google, tax. This is another psyop that's going on here. This article is a disgrace in many ways. Tax row giant. Google is paid by the government to collect our tax with HMRC. This doesn't seem to be the case at all. What's actually going on is that HMRC, there's a number of things going on. First of all, HMRC is closing 100 offices and sacking some staff. And these are going to be replaced with 13 regional bases. So this is absolutely evidence of EU influence here, because we're heading for the regionalisation of HMRC, as we are with the regionalisation of the police and every other institution. Basically, of course, everybody's screaming about this because of the continuing furore over the £130 million tax bill that Google has been given, which everybody agrees is utterly ridiculous. Nonetheless, what's actually going on is that HMRC is, well, it's being alleged in the article that they've entered into a contract. In fact, what's happening is that HMRC is moving everything onto the cloud. So all our data is going to move onto the cloud, hosted by Google, and HMRC is going to be using Google apps. So basically what we're seeing here is licensing of Google products through Capgemini and the various other IT contracts that HMRC has. What they're saying is, quote, "We have carefully considered protection of customer information, and this remains our priority." Well, if you look at this in the context that Google is just about to overtake Apple as being the biggest corporation on the planet, and we are now putting, what are we doing? Hospital records. Now we're putting tax records. We know that when we use our email on using Google services, that our emails are scanned algorithmically by Google in order to provide better targeting of advertising and so on. What does HMRC think that Google can do with the information that is placed on Google servers with everybody's tax records? That is massive.
Well, if you're going to introduce a world tax system, Mike, using carbon or whatever it's going to be, you need this world tax net to run it.
Absolutely. So and I'll just remind you once again that in 2013, when Bilderberg was held in the Grove, the week before Bilderberg, also in the Grove, Google held its annual confab, and the agenda over both those events was the global tax system and also big data in inverted commas. So this story isn't about the tax row with Google and the fact that Google's only paying £130 million. This article in the Mirror is diversionary in order to make sure people don't look too closely at what else is going on here. This is a massive story, I think.
And we'll just add to it, because of course we showed you this wiring diagram of the incestuous relationship between the Tory party, but in particular David Cameron and Google. So David Cameron and his advisors, David Cameron at Google weddings, it goes on and on. These people are absolutely in bed with each other. So this isn't even a decision that's been made with some form of distance between Google and the British government. Google is perhaps already the British government. Well, before we end there, I'd just like to say that several people have sent us this incredible document. This is Will Straw's, I'll hasten to actually say what it's called. What is it? It's Britain Stronger in Europe. This is apparently going to everybody in the country. This is all the not truths. It's funny, all the things listed as not true, my research says are actually true. So propaganda from son of Jack Straw, who's busy at the moment closing down the Freedom of Information Act in case the public actually discover even more of the scams going on in government. So this sent through as propaganda to get you to vote to stay in Europe. Well, if you want to be in the European dictatorship even further, follow his advice. If not, remarkably good horizontal in the rabbit's cage, or for guinea pigs, or on the fire. Or if you don't want to do that, just pop it in an envelope, address it and send it back. Don't think there's any need to pay. Well, the last point is that UKCOM has warned and warned of the dangers of NLP and the propaganda being pushed out by the government. We've also warned about mindfulness, and I'm astonished at how many people have come back to us and said to us, oh, no, you've got it wrong. Mindfulness is very nice and it's a really good thing. Well, we're going to say you need to do your research, because we're talking about government politicized mindfulness, and what it's designed to do is say, while chaos is unfolding around us, get stuck into mindfulness, because amongst that chaos we can make you feel happy. So I'm going to say thank you very much.
It's green.
It's green, okay. Is it? I'm disappearing there. It's blue there. This is the Ladybird Book of Mindfulness, which was kindly sent to me. And this is making it all very, I think this is for adults actually, but it's all very jokey. Mindfulness is the skill of thinking you're doing something when you're doing nothing. One of the good things about mindfulness is that you get to do a lot of sitting down. Well, that's pretty useful as we see the country destroyed. Sitting down is good for the mind because so much positive energy is stored in the lap. And I don't know whether it was a coincidence, but the first page has got a picture of a windmill. We're going to continue to say mindfulness and the application of politicised NLP, unbelievably dangerous. And we still haven't got to the bottom of the suicides amongst young people, including those South Wales suicides, when it has only been the UK column that's been warning about the mind control and the NLP unleashed on school children. Okay, that's the end of our news today. If you're sitting there feeling it's all too much, what can you do? It's just do something. It's the opposite to the mindfulness. It's actually get off your bottom and get out tackling the people that are allowing this policy to come into play. An email, a letter, talking to your friends, talking to people in that supermarket queue, or if you're really feeling motivated, pick up the phone to Willie Straw and ask him why he's pushing out such propaganda. It's guaranteed to make you feel better. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back same time tomorrow, and Ian Crane tonight.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.